As a small business owner, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure of choosing the right hire or leading a team? Or have you ever found yourself tolerating a bad hire because you fear trying and failing again as you repeat the hiring process? If so, you're not alone, and you are in the right place. Welcome to the Growing Your Team podcast. The Growing Your Team podcast teaches business owners like you to expand your unique business by teaching you to master the hiring and team management process. Hiring and managing a team does not have to be a challenge. You just have to learn to do it right. And the Growing Your Team podcast teaches you how to become a confident leader who hires right every single time. Now, let's jump into the show where each episode you will learn tips on how to identify what type of help you need on your team, how to source amazing candidates, how to conduct interviews that lead you to your ideal team member, how to onboard successfully, and how to lead every person in your business so you have a team of rock stars who you are happy to pay every single paycheck. So let's jump in and teach you how to hire like a pro. Hello, Jamie Van Kuyk here, and welcome back to the Growing Your Team podcast. Today, I have on guest Nate Ginter. Nate is a certified cybersecurity auditor and IT project manager. He recently found Reductive Dynamics, where he helps businesses of all sizes enhance their IT processes, security, and compliance, serving as a fractional vCSO, or Virtual Chief Security Officer. So I am so excited to have Nate back on the podcast. Nate recently exited the managed services IT provider company he founded and served as a chief technology officer for over a decade to transition to a new opportunity where he is helping businesses enhance their IT security. This is such an important topic when you have team members. Because one of the things we don't think about is we are giving our team members access to a lot of information about our business and information about our clients and information about our processes. And how do we trust that our team members are properly handling all that information and data that they have? And not just are they doing anything malicious, but even if they're accessing it in what we see as quote unquote normal ways, are they putting our company or our clients at risk? How do we make sure that things are protected when team members are sometimes accessing company information on their own personal devices, like cell phones? So Nate is going to talk us through some of the things that we need to be aware of, and also helping us really understand as small business owners when we need to start worrying about IT security and access to the data that our company has. So let's jump into the conversation so that way we make sure we're doing the right things and taking the right steps at the right time to protect ourselves, our company, and all the data that we might have on our clients, our business, and everything else that we want to keep protected. Hi, Nate. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. Good to be here. Now, I'm a two-timer, so really enjoying getting to talk to you again here.
Yes, it's so great to have you back. But before we get into today's topic, can you remind everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, little change since I was back. I had built in what they call a managed service provider. So a lot of businesses work with outsourced IT. Was their focus, still is. Exited that company last year. Still great friends with my old partners, but I have moved on to start doing solo security program management and compliance for businesses of all shapes and sizes. And the concept most people connect with typically, it's called vCSO or Virtual Chief Security Officer. But I really design, implement, and then maintain and manage security programs for businesses of all sizes.
Yes, that's great. So before we really get into a lot of kind of
Sure,
what you do now, like one of the things I just kind
100%.
of want to talk about a little bit is, you know, on this podcast, obviously we talk about growing teams and growing your
Sure.
business and everything. And I think sometimes business owners get into this mindset of, I'm growing this business, this is my path.
Mhm.
I'm stuck in it. And so I just love that you
Sure.
were able to go and start this business and then reach a point where you had this team, you have these people, like these other leaders and stuff you're working with, and then just recognizing that, hey, it's time for something different and it's time for something new. That just kind of that reminder of, we
Sure.
don't have to be stuck in one business forever. We can go and take on new adventures.
So it's interesting, and sometimes that thing that you're stuck in, or that you're working on the ground and every day, there's aspects of it that you love, and then there's aspects that that are not your even the highest and best use of your time, right?
Mhm.
Especially as a business owner, a lot of times you try to be a lot of different things. And one of the things that I really felt like was more of a calling to me as I progressed through my kind of IT side of my career, being boots on the ground and getting in and digging in and fixing in individual issues and maintaining systems is fun, right? That's a cool thing to do, and it has its own challenges. But where I really developed a passion and found that I was good at was really talking to business owners, figuring out what their challenges were, and things that are on a little bit higher programmatic level, right? So I use the term operational security and organizational security. So on the operational side, that's kind of what we did at Vine, right? We were there making sure everything worked. If somebody couldn't print or something like that, hey, and that's very important, and something that everybody needs and has to have. But what gets overlooked a lot of times, and this is something that especially as people grow, right? You're usually in one spot when you start your business, and then as you start to add more employees on, you're typically kind of ad hoc trying to add in a system for document management, or hey, we need to get a different accounting package and these things. But we don't often sit and take a holistic look at our whole IT infrastructure or technology platforms, and say, okay, is there a way that we can really mature this to where we are now? What do we have more risks than we used to, right? More people doing things, offering more services, especially, if you're in an industry where you've got data that you want to keep, away from everyone. If you're running an ice cream stand and, you have an email compromise, or somebody gets a hold of, financials or something like that, that's more your problem, right? But if you're in any sort of professional services or business to business environment, that can have repercussions far beyond reputation, right? So it's cool to get to kind of speak to those people, and really help them with the general design aspect, and then oversight, right? How do we know we're doing it right? How do we know that we're getting the most out of everything?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that is so important because you're right, Nate. Like when we go and we're building our businesses and we're small and we're just kind of like making things up as we go along, even though we don't really necessarily want to admit that. And we're
I
like,
like I like the term building the plane as you're flying it. It sounds a little bit
yes. I was um helping to recruit before I get back to my point. I was helping to
no,
recruit
go ahead.
for a client a few months back. And that was like one of the things that we described of like where they were at that stage of the business and the position that they were helping to bring in. It was that they built the plane as they were flying. It
Hmm.
got from point A to point B. From a customer perspective, it looked like a plane, but for those internal to the organization, it was a hot mess. And they're like, okay, we need to take this hot mess that gets us from point A to point B. And now we need to restructure everything to actually look like a plane and feel like a
Oh,
plane and have the safety of a plane,
absolutely.
even though it's successful in getting us from point A to point B.
Well, and there's also the always the challenge of the imposter syndrome, right? Because especially business owners are typically very driven people, very focused people, and visionary, and you get that feeling where you're like, oh, I'm not as good as so and so. You compare yourself to a different metric. That's one challenge. The other thing is, especially if you experience rapid growth, or you get an awesome new client or something that really needs you, that helps you to be able to level up a little bit, is then going, okay, so how do we analyze what we're doing and say, okay, no, this is not just my own, I'm a perfectionist kind of personality coming out, versus, okay, we've got some real challenges, and what's that structure that can help us get to that point where we are an actual efficient flying crew for sure.
Yes, yes. So, okay, to go back to kind of the question that I was going to get at. So, okay, we
Yeah,
are at this process. We're building the plane as we're going. We're
yeah,
adding things on. We then start adding team members. And I know for a lot of people that are listening, our team members are also remote, which sometimes
sure,
means, do we have them use their own computer? Do we give them a computer? What does that look like? How do we attach everything together? I know
sure,
last time you were on the podcast, like one of the things we talked about was even just kind of password management and how to make sure people have access to things and like how to handle
sure.
that and all that stuff to keep secure. But I feel like it is one of those things where we when we don't operate in this spot of security and being knowledgeable about it, we assume
Right.
that all the platforms that we are signing on for, that we're paying for, is
Sure.
protecting us. So help me like kind of dumb this down to like, the
Sure.
kindergartner level of what exactly are you doing and why is this important when, like I said, like I'm paying a company that I'm using their software and I'm
Sure.
assuming it's secure, and like, so what are the risks and everything that I don't know that I don't know?
So a basic analogy is this: I can go down to Home Depot and I can buy like a 200-piece toolkit, right? But when I buy that toolkit from them, they're not guaranteeing that I'm going to know how to use all of those tools. So what's always very important, and one of the first things that that we look at when we look at things is, from a general IT and security side, there's something called a framework, right? So think of it as like a set of best practices. So you kind of pick one and you judge on that overall. And one of the parts of going through that, and even saying, because it's like everything else, hey, maybe we can't afford X, Y, or Z best practice, but at least we know, here's the baseline that we should have. So, when you get into specific things, there's nerdy things that we probably all heard of, like password management and multi-factor, right? But the real issue that you're talking about is when people go out and they find a tool for something, and I'll use Microsoft or Google as an example, right, for your backend, for
Mhm.
your email system. Well, Microsoft and Google are there to provide you with a service that makes everything work, but they don't secure it, right? That's up to you to decide what levels of security you want to put on it. So, for example, a lot of their spam filtering features, or, as we mentioned, multi-factor authentication, even working with remote users, right? By default, you can hand somebody an account and they can sign in from any device. Well, if you're a company that's trying to protect your information, maybe you want them only using company devices to access their email and these things. So that's a separate thing that needs to be set up, right? So those processes, that you're buying the tool set. Now, most people, out of that 200, a set of wrenches and tools, they might only ever pick up 5 of them, right? But that
Right.
doesn't mean that they're not all there and available. And what I try to do is help people navigate, okay, what are our goals? What can we accomplish with little to no capital expenditure? Are there more advanced things? Maybe they're somebody who works with protected data, somebody in the medical field, somebody in the legal field, insurance, mortgage, all these various things that have their own requirements, right? So we want to first identify, okay, the business that we're in, are we actually legally required to do stuff, right? So we want to make sure we're meeting those requirements. And even for people that don't have a legal requirement to do something, you want to go, okay, so remote workers, what do we think is a smart idea? Do we think that we should really make sure that only people that are accessing our emails and our files are on company devices that we issue? Because even if you're issuing them, if you haven't made it so that only company devices can access them, well, most people can figure out that, like, hey, I can pull up my company laptop and open it up and sign in there. Or I'm already on my tablet at home. I can just go to Microsoft and sign in right here. And oh, look at that. My username and password work, right? So, those are decisions that are hard to know, and that's why one of the reasons why I do what I do, right? So people have somebody they can talk to and figure those things out and help them uh, guide along what those implementations look like. And when you've been doing things as long as I have, both from the building, IT side of things, building things from the ground up, and then from the security and compliance side, I can help shortcut a lot of problems and a lot of conversations that people, again, it's like anything else. It's tough. It's tough to do by yourself. It's tough to know what to do. But in general, especially as you're growing your team, I always tell people just make sure you start thinking about, especially as you hit that, every organization is different, but generally around 5 to 10 employees are where people's IT needs go from, okay, well, we threw a couple of folders up on Google Drive or Dropbox and we all just kind of work out of there, to start needing some structure to where they're storing things and those processes like you talked about, as you're building that plane. And it becomes very, very hard to do if you've never even seen a wing before, to know where they go on the plane, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Like you kind of have my mind spinning of like a lot of different
Sure,
things that I want to like
sure.
ask about. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it is one of those things like I think like you bring up like a really good point of, do we only want people accessing stuff from company issued devices? And
Sure.
there's probably some ways where it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. I want things protected, but at the same time, we live in a day and age where everyone has access to email on their phones.
Sure.
So how like so how do we make sure like that's secure? Do we
Mhm.
allow people to access email from their phones? Is there then things we set up with the email system to make sure it's protected? Because we can't manage their phones if it's their own personal phones, or like,
Sure.
or should we be sitting there and saying, no, you shouldn't be accessing your email on your phone because it's not our device.
Well, so those are there's two things to unpack there. So there's we'll think about the concept of like the organization and then the operation, right? So organizationally, we make those decisions. So we would sit down, and if I was consulting with someone, I would say, okay, how important is to you? Because like you said, we call that BYOD, or bring your own device, when we say to an employee, hey, you can just add your email account to your phone, and there's no security there beyond your username and password, and we're on Microsoft 365, right? There's a world
Mhm.
in which that's the security and that's allowed. So one of the things that you want to do is make sure you have a policy in place so people have that acceptable use, because you would be shocked how many companies do that, and they don't actually have anywhere where an employee is signed off, I will not steal all of our company data and contacts that I have access to and sell them to my next employer. Well, if you haven't made them sign something that says that they're not going to do that, there's nothing that stops them from doing that. So there are things. Now, if we want to take it a step further and go beyond just we've told them not to do that, so we're really hoping they don't. There are there are ways. There's kind of a mid step where you can say you can bring your own device, but part of that you'll have to actually, when you're setting it up, you have to accept that we have the control and the ability to wipe your phone or to revoke access to that application, right? So if their phone is lost or stolen, there's some like they call it mobile device management, but there's some features. Some are native in Microsoft, some use third parties, where it's your phone, it's there, but it has our stuff on it. So if you lose it or we fire you, under bad circumstances, or God forbid something happens to you, we're not left in the dark as far as what's going on. So that device will get locked and wiped, and it'll be factory reset at the time you leave the company. So
So the
those are
whole device. So not just like
it.
the apps, the company apps, the whole
It
device.
there are you can actually do both. So
Okay.
you can make it so that just the email access will be revoked. You can also make it so that the entire device is actually able to be completely wiped when they join the company network, if they really want to bring their own device. I typically say, it really depends on the company. So if you're like a military contractor, you're in medical, they need to have a solution that makes it so that that data is not living on your private device. So there's a lot there. The other thing, and this is something that I advise people on, just because we started talking about email, we really don't want email to be a place where we have a lot of, hey, there's always going to be internal communication, right? There's going to be, some clients here or there that are going back and forth, but you don't want any data, if, for example, you're a doctor's office, right? you don't want, you should be training your employees, and you should keep any medical data out of that system so that that device isn't walking around with actual protected information. There's kind of two levels to it. For the
Okay.
average small business owner, where it's more reputational stuff that we're worried about, you do have a little bit more freedom there. And especially, again, while you're smaller, it's understandable. We all do the best we can with what we've got. It's very hard to do the security that you need to for just a couple of people, that or even pay for getting everybody a cell phone, right? That can be a challenge for people. But where you can, it is absolutely advisable. And there's even things now, when it comes to Microsoft, where there's like virtual platforms where they're not actually ever, nothing's ever actually on the phone. It's more just like an application that connects to a separate system, right? which
Okay.
is which is a lot more usable.
Yeah, so that was like one of the things that I was wondering as well. Now this was, oh gosh, I don't know how many years ago, because I've been out of corporate for almost 9 years now. And this was,
Sure.
they switched things over at some point in time. And I remember the at one point in time in one of my corporate jobs, even on our company computer, if we weren't on the network,
Hmm.
we had to log into a virtual desktop to
Right.
access things.
Correct.
So like that would
Correct.
kind of be that one layer of protection. If you're not on the active network, you kind of
Right.
mentioned that there's
Right.
these apps that everything's housed in the app versus like everything being housed in the phone.
Absolutely, and there's whole ecosystems that are built around that. Virtual platforms where, and we say virtual. I know for the folks that don't live in this nerd world, imagine if instead of hitting like iPhotos and it opening up and all, you're seeing all the photos that are on your phone and in the cloud, you're actually accessing a separate system that it lives somewhere else. None of that data is actually on your phone. You're seeing a full work environment. Same thing with email. You're not pulling up an email application that's actually running directly on your phone. You're pulling up basically a link to something that's then pulling that information down. And if the second you cut off your internet connection, you won't be able to do anything because everything you're doing is actually somewhere else. It's a window into another environment. That's a great way to do that, especially for smaller businesses. A lot of folks don't set up their systems that way, which is okay. But there is a maturity time that you hit where, and especially again, this really depends by industry, right? Because if you're a doctor's office or anybody who's interfacing, even like a lawyer that's dealing with medical cases or anything like that for your clients, some of these things are not optional, even if it's just you. One of my clients is literally, it's somebody who it's a single practice lawyer who works out of their home, and there are still a number of protections that apply whether you have one employee or 100. Those I'll treat a little bit separately. But for
Mhm.
this conversation, as far as general business and what they should be doing to secure their things, really the question is, do we have enough sensitive information in our emails that if this employee walked out the door and had everything taken with them, are we okay with that? I can't answer that question for the business owner, but that's really the question, because the second you let somebody use their own personal device and they're accessing your systems, you have lost control of that data.
Right.
So, and you have to expect that it is a possibility that they could take it with them. Now, hopefully you've been working with Jamie and you've hired some people that are, not going to be a problem with that sort of stuff. But if you've done
Hopefully.
your own hiring, if you've done your own hiring, or you run into a bad actor, these things do happen for sure. It's
Yeah.
actually, believe it or not, one of the last year, the data's a little fuzzy on this stuff, but the biggest trend they've seen is that in incidents that result in data loss or data being exported out of a company, about 70% of the time, it is someone internal, whether on purpose or by accident, that caused it, right? So more likely than not, it's not going to be a North Korea or Russian hacker that causes your data to get out there. It's going to be somebody, now they could be part of it, could be something they open up, could be other things, but it's going to be somebody internal that does something.
That's interesting. And it's also one of those things where it's like, we talked about hiring and we want to make sure that we hire the good person. Sometimes people are good until they're not. Like, it's not
Right?
that they have a
True.
track record, or like you said, it could
Yeah,
be accidentally doing something,
for
or
sure.
it could be sometimes that they don't know what they don't know, that
Yeah.
it in hindsight, it makes sense. Like, why would you think it's okay to take company information and share it with your next employer? But at the same time, they might think, well, this is information I had access to. Like, why, like, it's in my brain. Like, why can't I
Right.
export a file? And so, I think sometimes like people don't have ill intent, at least not at first. And,
Yeah.
things happen.
Oh, for sure. And there are, there are tons of cases out there of people who, wire fraud is a big problem, right? People, sending, well, in like 99.9% of cases of wire fraud, they happen because somebody that worked at the company sent the money to these people, right? Very few of them actually were in cahoots with anyone trying to do that, but the company didn't have the right policies, processes, and controls in place to make sure that proper verification was done. We worked with a company that had a very, I mean, it took me a good minute and a half of looking at it to be like, oh no, I see exactly what happened here. Looked like a really legitimate email. It just turns out the bank account had been switched from one of their clients over to a place in Saudi Arabia. So there are, I'm sorry, I don't want to put dirt on Saudi Arabia's name. It was actually in Iran, which is, well, interesting because they're not part of our banking system, but we were actually able to we work with the FBI. We were able to get their money back, which, because it happened, this person, again, we want to talk about some of the things with security and IT that go back to just people and training. We had gone through a training process with them where they realized something was wrong almost immediately, and they didn't try to investigate or hide it. They just went, hey, I think there was a mistake made. Please, can we look into this? We actually were able to respond within like 8 hours and get the FBI involved. So the money was actually able to be returned. I can't promise, past success is no indication of future results, but generally speaking, the quicker that we can identify these things, the better. So that we call it the human firewall, that
Mhm.
personnel training is also a big part of making sure that you've got a secure and efficient just technology infrastructure in general, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned kind of the policies and procedures, because as you were
Mhm.
talking about that, even before you mentioned that transfer of money and stuff, it
Yep.
reminded me of someone I know in the HR world. They help with
Sure.
their clients' payroll. They got an
Mhm.
email from a supposed employee saying that they wanted to change their bank account for their
Mhm.
direct deposit,
Yep.
and they did, and it turned out that it was hacked. Like that was the email did not come from the employee. It looked like
Yep.
it was coming from the employee's email address, but it wasn't. And that
Right.
was like that kind of red flag to them, like, oh, we need to put better policies and procedures in place of how do we verify when this comes in to make sure that it's an actual legitimate request. And I've actually heard
Sure.
that from a few different people that do payroll processing and everything, that there's this trend of that's they'll find out an employee's name and they'll try to
Yes.
pretend to be that employee to get the payroll deposits put into their bank account instead of the employee's bank account.
Absolutely. And usually by the time anybody realizes something's gone under 24 hours, most international transfers, you can put a hold on it or get it back. But when it's something like payroll, people don't usually notice that there's been a problem within 24 hours. So we actually there's a term in the security industry and for using targeted emails that are impersonating other people. It's called spear phishing. So they what they do, I mean, I've seen incredibly sophisticated versions of this, up to and including something like this, where let's say you're, acmerobotics.com is your company name, right? Well, they'll spell robot with two B's, right? You spell it with one, that's your domain. They spell it with two B's. So even the email address, if you're not like really looking hard at it, it'll look very similar. They'll even do recon where they might email your sales team and say, hey, I'm interested in getting a sales demo. Could you email me and let me know, some good times? What they'll do then is most people in most companies have a company email and a company email signature format. Well, they've now got that. So then they'll go to the website and they'll say, okay, well, who's in charge of HR? Okay. Oh, and look at this. Some teams even post like their whole employee roster. Well, now they've got a person, they know who the request probably should go to. They know what the email system looks like. It costs like $3 to buy a domain. So they can spend all the money in the world on a junk domain that's close to yours. And then they also know how to make it look like it's a company formatted email to send it over to them. So those things are getting. Now there are some protections, again, going back to, if you know what to look for, that can actually look for patterns like that, even using, Microsoft systems. Some of those are, going back to our toolkit analogy, not every Microsoft 365 product even is created the same, right? So there are some advanced security features that are higher tiers that you have to pay for. Now, the average person, again, not going to even know about that, right? They're going to think, I bought 365, I got the plan that comes with the things, that does the email. All right, let's go. But there are, advanced threat protection and some other, Microsoft Defender for email, things that are add-ons. The people, if you don't know what they do, you're not going to go looking for them. And also, generally speaking, the way people purchase things, your mind wants it to be whatever the affordable option that meets your operational goals, right? I want my email to work. Oh, this does email? Cool. I got it. It does Teams and a couple of other things. Great. This is the package I need. Now, those packages that were a little further down the line, most of what made them more expensive was more advanced security capabilities. So even in the purchasing of things, I see a lot of people that they go like, "Oh, well, no one ever told me." And now I know in my head, I don't say this because I get it, but I'm like, but that page you were on when you selected, there were three other options and they had a bunch of other features. We just don't know, or you want it to be the stuff that, it's the lower price, right?
Or
And
it's just like you think, I
yeah,
don't need that yet, but we
a
never
hundred
think
percent.
about when yet would be.
The craziest example of overlooked thinking, right? A lot of people, I tell people all the time, the biggest backstop that you're ever going to have against anything happening is always at the end of the day, and this is a part of every framework. I don't care, from the really high security military all the way on down to like the most basic advice you can find online, is people talking about backups, right? So there are tons of people that they have all these different systems that are very important to their business. And maybe they use 5 or 6 different platforms, plus they've got their own files and proposals and things that they store. And like they just assume, oh, Microsoft has my back, or Dropbox or Google. You should be backing up even those things, because sometimes they don't. Or if an account gets compromised that has access to those things, people will take the data and then they'll delete it. Or in cases of ransomware, which is becoming less prevalent, but still there. But
Mhm.
what really worries me in this day and age is online platforms. Here's another thing. Microsoft is not perfect. I know that'll be shocking to a lot of your audience, but in 2023, Microsoft actually just straight up, through an unfortunate series of events, lost 12,000 businesses, everything, right? Email configurations, they didn't even know about them. Those clients were gone out of their system. So, a lot of people use Microsoft in the cloud anymore for, you remember in the corporate world, you had your file shares, you had your email, you had your communications platforms, even chat platforms. Now, it's awesome that Microsoft does all these things, but imagine if everything disappeared. Well, that can happen. It has happened in the
Wow.
past. So even those platforms, you want to make sure are being backed up and reviewed once in a while, right? It's not something you have to stare at every day. It's helpful if you use a system that at least tell you if there's been a failure. But those are things that businesses should be aware of. And even companies like, if you're really dependent on Salesforce, for example, Salesforce has very robust backups and things, but data does get lost, and there are sometimes things where bad actors go in. Sometimes if somebody gets a hold of your data, they might just start changing data, and then you don't even know that things are wrong for like a couple of months. But now it's been changed in the system and it's been backed up, so it's there. So, for critical things, I tell people we should even be coming up with processes to make sure that every once in a while, frequency will be determined by, the importance of the data or how critical it is to your business. But you should have a record of those things somewhere. Do not trust, listen, to call Microsoft up and tell them how important the data that's not there anymore is to you does nothing. At the end of the day, it's, what do you have copies of? Can we rebuild, data sets, everything? You can't have a whole separate platform for QuickBooks or something like that just sitting around, but you can make sure that all that data that's in QuickBooks is backed up and is secured somewhere in a good fashion on a semi-regular basis so that, you are protected against these things.
Right. Wow. It's some of those things oh gosh, we don't think of,
Nope.
especially we start small. We start small
Yep.
and you think like the larger companies, they have people on staff or they contract with other companies that do all this thinking for them. And we're like, okay, yeah, that's good for them. But as I mentioned, like we just don't think about what is that tipping point that we need to start thinking about this. When is this expense become a necessary expense versus not? Because like you talked about, Nate, like those different tiers. Sometimes when we're going to sign up for a platform, we're a
Yep.
business of one when we sign up for it. But so we
Absolutely.
don't need all that stuff because we're just like, I don't need it yet. And then we never
Sure.
even think about when we go to add our second employee or a third employee or 10th employee, oh,
Yep.
wait, maybe it makes sense for those higher tiers because now I have more people involved and everything.
And also, even along that, and it's funny because this from a hiring and an operational perspective from a company, but sometimes, and this is where sometimes there's some hidden costs, right? So if you start doing something with any product that's designed for say 1 to 5 people, well, when you make that jump from 5 to 10, you've also got to start thinking about, okay, my processes that I'm building here, am I building something that like it might cost me 40 hours or a couple of $1,000s now to start putting that framework in place versus what is it going to look like if I go from 8 to 10 employees and now I want to have that next tier of service? Have I at least given myself some runway? Have I documented anything? Have I started putting these things in place? Or, in the case of like Microsoft or Google Workspace, you can start with a platform that can evolve with you as you go. That's one of the big differentiators for me, for businesses. I get asked all the time, should we go with Microsoft? Should we go with Google? There's pros and cons to both, but I can tell you that there's almost no purpose for a back end operations and communications platform that Microsoft won't fulfill for you somewhere down the road at any size,
Yeah.
or have partners that directly link in with them. Google is very easy to use. And so, if you're not really going to use any file management or, the SharePoint offering from Microsoft, if it's really just always going to be for email and you're going to have a couple of systems that tie in here and there, but email wise, that's really all we're doing, maybe Google's a better fit for you. But both of those platforms can scale up in a way that something like, I use QuickBooks Self-Employed for my business, right? Well, I know at some point down the road, if I hire a bunch more people, that's not going to be an option anymore, right? Well, really, one more person, right? That's
Right.
not going to scale with me. But I did a little research ahead of time, and I made sure that information from QuickBooks Self-Employed, if I do want to move up to one of those higher tiers, they could import that information over into one of the regular accounting packages for larger businesses. So I always just say, when you're picking something, if it's just for you, you got all the leeway in the world. When we hit 3 to 5, that's time to start thinking about, okay, do we want to start planning down the road?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things, like for those of you who are listening, is just remember, we don't have to be experts in this
Right?
stuff. Like we don't have to become the IT security expert. We don't
Oh,
have to
sure.
go know what packages are best from us, but we need to get the answers. So I know one of the things I talk about a little bit with hiring is we can hire the doers, the leaders, or the educators. Are kind of like the three categories that I put in.
Sure.
So like sometimes we need to go outside our business to get the people that are going to educate us on what we need. So those
Sure.
consultants, those people that come in and review things. So like Nate, that can come in and say, okay, now that you have X amount of employees, now that you're using these systems, that you work in this industry, this is what you need to be safe and secure. So
Correct.
if you're listening to this, you don't need to become the security expert. We need
I
to
prefer if you didn't.
tap into the security experts. Right? Stay in your
Absolutely. And
lane, stay in your
it,
zone
it
of genius.
it's so funny to me because IT is one of the very few things, IT and security in general, is one of the things that I see businesses really trying to drag their feet on as they grow, which is wild. And when I say drag your feet, I don't just mean from like getting more machines or anything like that. What'll typically happen is in a smaller business, they say to the office manager, Talk to maybe they even they go, hey, we're going to get an outsourced IT company. And then you work with them and that'll be our IT and security solution, right? Um, the secret that a lot of people don't know is that your IT company's job is to keep what you have running on a day-to-day basis, right? They're not really long-term vision, and especially if you've got any kind of compliance needs, they're not going to be industry specific for a lot of those things. So where it's important to work with somebody who knows what's going on is to come in and say, hey, here's an actual thing. Nothing is new under the sun. There are 80 different ways that we can say we're going to go with this methodology and we're going to follow that. We're going to identify what we're good at, what we're bad at, and some of the things that we're bad at, we might be fine with for the next 5 years. But some of them we might want to make a plan for, because not everything is going to be something that you're going to flip a switch or make a settings change or buy a new product and that's fixed tomorrow. Sometimes, especially, if you get to companies 10, 20 employees or higher, those companies have some processes that might need some time to mature to even get to the point where the technology can make sense for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having somebody who can guide you through that process is very important. Just the way that I put it is like this: I am, even though I play one on TV, I am not an actual lawyer. So when it comes to any sort of actual legal advice that I need, I talk to a lawyer, because yes, I can Google some things and I can put them together, but that's not going to give me like a definitive answer. I don't have a background in these things. So I want to make sure that for those things that I'm actually seeking some expert guidance and advice. And there are a million different ways to set up those relationships, but I do want to stress to people that are business owners, if you're listening and you go, oh, I work with an IT person, they're not responsible for your security. You're responsible for your security. That's an organizational issue. Operations are what they're responsible for. If they tell you, hey, we're going to do patching, keeping your machines up to date and monitor antivirus and things like that, that's all well and good, but that's actually not organizational security.
Right.
Organizational security is saying, here's what we have deemed to be important, here are the areas that we've deemed important, and we're going to use a tried and true methodology to make sure these things are actually being done. Because you're not going to believe this, Jamie, but just because you pay somebody to tell you that they're updating all of your machines or they're making sure that everybody is adhering to different programs and things that you have set out there, doesn't mean it's happening. And one of the interesting conversations I've had with multiple people who have been through some bad scenarios, right? And they go, well, I was
Yeah.
paying these guys to do this. They should have done it. And I go, hey man, all the should haves in the world aren't changing where we're at now because they weren't. So, even it's good to sometimes to have some oversight over the operational side, but also to even know what you should be asking the operations people for is very important.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's like in everything in business, you need the checks and balances. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just always take someone's word for it. You need to be able
Right.
to see the action. You need to know. It's one of those things I always say when it comes to leading and managing teams, we don't have to be the expert in everything, but we have
Right.
to know what questions to ask in order to be able to ensure that they're doing the work that they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
What does that check and balance actually look like? That you don't want someone leading your business down the wrong path. Like, you don't have to be the expert in everything, but what does it
Well,
look like to be on the right path?
at the most basic level, right? Most business owners, they're not, not usually financial experts, but they know a couple of key performance indicators. How much do we have in the bank? How much are we spending a month? How much is
Yeah.
left over? These sorts of very basic things that are, I mean, that's year one stuff for an accountant, but getting to the point where those are accurate and reflective, and what to look for, can sometimes be a challenge. So where IT and security are no different. There's a couple of key things that when you know what to look for, you go, okay, is patching working the right way, or is our antivirus working the right way, or our backup systems working the right way, is our employee training working the right way? And those are simple questions to ask, complicated methodology to get there, and that's where the real work happens in what we do.
Yes. Yes. All right, Nate. Well, we have to wrap up because we are almost at the top of our time. So tell
Oh, wow.
everybody.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
it
I know
always
it's
goes
flown
so
by.
quick.
It has. All right. So for those people who are listening right now, they're like, okay, yep, I really need someone to come in and review all this, be the expert. How can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So my company is reductivedynamics.com, and I'm sure we'll be posting a link along with the videos where you post them. But I say go there. You can view my consulting resume, and there's a link to my LinkedIn profile. So you can see that, people that I've worked with, companies I've worked with in the past. And there's also a button, a big giant one. It's spread out several times, called Book Now. You hit that, and it takes you to a page where you can book a free consult with me. I'm always happy to talk to anybody of any size. I don't have a minimum size of people that I work with or any particular vertical. And, please feel free to reach out. And if I'm not a good fit for you, I'll either try to point you to somebody who is, or say, hey, here's a couple of simple things you can do when you get a little bit more maturity, and we'll come back and take another look for you. So never a wasted opportunity. I always love chatting with people, and don't hesitate or feel bad even if you just have a question. I'm always happy to speak with
Yeah, I love that because that's like one of the things that I do too. It's like not everyone who comes to me is ready to hire a recruiter or to get the hiring
you.
help, but
Sure.
it's like to be able to give that little thing of like, okay, here's what you need to do, or
Right.
also here's what to look for. Like here's the sign
Yeah.
that you're going to be ready. I think that's great that you're able to offer that and really give people the support that they need to make sure that they're making the right decisions in their business for right now.
I'm a people person. It's my favorite part of the job is actually interacting with folks and helping them get where they need to be. So, I think that a lot of times, when somebody thinks about talking to like a technical resource, or God forbid a consultant, that it's going to be this, arduous process, cost a bunch of money, and, maybe they see some results. I tell people up front, if you didn't get something out of our first conversation, why would you want to have a second? So, I
Right.
promise I won't make anybody turn their head and cough. Everything will be a great, pleasant experience for you, and I'll give you the best advice I can.
Sounds good. All right, Nate, my final question that I've asked you before, but I'm going to ask you
Okay.
again. We've all had leaders or managers that have stood out to us. Think of a leader or manager that has stood out to you and share one thing about them.
Sure, sure. So I'm going to give, actually, now that I think about it, I'm probably going to give you the same answer, but for a different reason, which will be
Sounds
interesting.
good.
So I would say Mike Thackeray, my former partner and CEO over at Vine. He's an inspiring leader, great guy. Want to become a very good friend of mine personally. Operates with a lot of integrity, which I didn't. When things are, when everybody's rowing in the same direction, right? It's very easy for everybody to get along. As I went to move on to doing my own consulting thing, and we had to work through them buying me out and some other things. It was very interesting. I saw an integrity at work, and a true caring for people, which was me in this case, but also caring about the company in a way that really touched my heart, quite frankly. When money's involved, that's when people really get tested, and just knowing how much we were able to find something that worked for everybody was really truly cool. Very, very inspiring to see, and just really, I always had faith in him, and had faith in the business world, but it's nice to have that feeling like, hey, there are great people in the world that really are trying to find the way that everybody has an awesome outcome, which is really cool.
Great. It was, you just reminded me of this quote, and I'm not going to get it right, but it was
Mm.
about dating, but it said, you know, the true person is not who they were at the beginning of the relationship, but it's who they showed up as when the relationship was ending. And I think that's
Yes.
really a mark of a true good leader. And it's one of those things that like I try to instill in people all the time. It's relationships in the business world are going to end. Like most of your employees are not going to be there until you shut the door of your business. They're going to go
Right.
on to other things. And it's like how you make that exit is just as important as how you manage them and how you worked with them while they were there, because that's what they're going to
Absolutely.
remember. They're going to remember, did you end the relationship with grace? Did you support them in their next adventure? Did you do things that made them feel like a good person? Or were you the
Yeah.
type of boss that said, okay, you're leaving. I hate you. Get out of here. Like that's
Right.
how they're going to remember. And that's really the mark of being a true leader or not.
I completely agree, and I've been very fortunate to work with some great people in my lifetime, and I hope that someday on a podcast somebody says I was that kind of guy.
Hopefully, I'm sure somebody will. All right, Nate. Well, we have to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team
Absolutely,
podcast.
100%, Jamie. Always a pleasure. I'll see you at the next LSP event.
Are you ready to hire a new team member for your business and you want to ensure you hire the person who can succeed in the role, make you happy, and positively impact your bottom line? Then let's talk and see how growing your team can help you master the art of hiring. Through bespoke hiring frameworks and comprehensive guidance, you will learn how to attract candidates who have the passion you desire and the skills needed to succeed. At Growing Your Team, women entrepreneurs and leaders work with us to help them expand their unique businesses by teaching them how to hire like a pro. Let's connect and see how we can help you. Send me an email at jamie@growingyourteam.com. That's Jamie, Jamie, @growingyourteam.com, or head on over to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, with jumpstart being all one word, and let's talk about how you can become a confident leader who hires right every single time.